And this is my first ever YouTube video, and I will post this and probably delete it by the time I really figure out what I'm doing and redo this. But we're going to have to start somewhere, so we're going to start here. Now, I've been for the last longish time been living kind of rough, kind of sleeping in couches and different rooms, and kept all my stuff in storage. Now I have a place I'll be able to stay for a few months, and I pulled all the boxes out of storage, and I'm putting my music away. And my music is next to me. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go through, I've already alphabetized everything. We're going to go through my music from A to Z, and I'm going to talk about these CDs that I've bought over the years, what I remember about them, which ones I really like, and which ones are, why did I buy that one? And we're going to go from A to Z. So the first one we have here this is ABBA. I can't say I'm love ABBA, but I know them, and they have a lot of pleasant songs, and this is kind of a greatest hits compilation, and there's nothing wrong with greatest hits compilations with bands that you don't know that well. And a friend of mine really loved that band, and she told me I should buy this, and yeah, I like it, and there's a lot of pleasant music. Next, and I think I'm going to move this so I won't have to lean over each time, we have a rather strange one. This is Bashir Abdel Al, and it is called Art of the Arabian Flute, and very pleasant music. I do have a lot of taste around the international, different flavors of music. I'm not a musicologist. I don't really know what these guys are doing, but I like listening to unique sounds. And this is a double because the second song is called Eternal Egypt, and it's by two people named Phil Thornton and Hassam Ramzi. It doesn't really have a cover you can see that well. And this falls into a category, I think I have 3 or 4 albums like this, where people attempt to recreate the music of some past and ancient civilization that may or may not have written down their music in the way that we can access, or even have instruments that have survived to today, or they're just sort of guessing what the sound is like. And some of that music can be quite haunting, and some of it can be kind of like, what? So, yep, now I'm going to pick up these and put them where I can, don't have to lean over each time. Again, this will be part I'll edit out. Now, I have different periods of my life where I've either been prosperous and I've gone out and enjoyed music, or I just stayed at home and listened to what's on the radio. And during one of the periods that I was been living here in the East Bay for a while, I would go to clubs occasionally, and people who would play their music would often be selling their own CDs. And this is one of these. This is a Dara Ackerman, and it's called Skyland. And it's an excellent CD. I like her voice. I like some of her songs. And I don't know if she's still playing. She was certainly playing around the mid 2000s. And there's a song on here called, let's see, Meditation, Same Planet, Different Universe, Not Afraid. That's the song that is a really good song on this. And I did some checking on both Amazon and All Music, and this particular CD is not available anymore, but on Amazon, individual song clips are available. So I don't know if Dara's still playing, but if she is, I wish her success. This is called Naked Keys by Margie Adams, or maybe it's Margie Adams. It's an album of piano music, and a friend of mine, a couple that I hung around with, really liked this particular album. I bought it and I listened to it. It's pleasant music. I don't remember it super well. Okay, now I grew up in the 60s, and my main music orientation is the hot bands of the 60s, especially around the Bay Area, the rock and roll and the various musics that are adjacent to it. So what has always kind of intimidated me is musics that have been going on for a long, long time before I started listening to music. And I just don't know where a particular band fits in. I don't know where a particular artist, what his catalog is like, and I just buy blindly. And in the mid 70s, a friend of mine took me to a club in I think it was Manhattan Beach, south of in the Los Angeles airport area, and we listened to a cat named Cannonball Adderley. And I said, "Wow, this guy's great." But I see here it's got hundreds of albums, well, maybe dozens, and I just picked this one up blindly. Cannonball Adderley Quartet, complete recordings. Was this complete recordings of his entire life? This is just 2 CDs. I believe he probably had more. I also have Cannonball Adderley Jazz Masters 31. Again, jazz is a world I don't really know, and I just either I get a guide, which we'll come to later, or I just buy randomly. And for Cannonball Adderley, I bought randomly. Then in the mid 70s, when Bob Marley took off, the record companies sort of said, "Wow, international music might be great." And Jamaican music is obviously popular. How about we look around for African music? And the first African performer that they tried to really get out there was a guy named King Sunny Ade from Nigeria, and this is a recording called Juju Music. It didn't really take off, but it's a wonderful album. He's got this very interesting instrumentation and the way different instruments I am not familiar with, but they interplay with each other in ways that are subdued but very nice. So there's one company in the music world which does a great job of combining contemporary music from different areas of the world and showing how the musics of one area interplay with the musics of other areas, and that is the Putumayo Company. And I've got quite a few of their CDs. I am not, as I say, most of these have been in boxes for a while, so I intend to go back and listen to them. But here we have African Beat, which is mostly, of course, African music with emphasizing rhythm and emphasizing percussion. Then we have African Blues. Blues is the music of African Americans originally, but in the world nowadays, the music from one area will naturally flow into another, and African people from the continent themselves are playing the music of their distant relatives in the diaspora here in America, and that's always interesting. And then we have African Groove, and we have African Reggae. So these are all 4 Putumayo albums, and I like Putumayo, what they do. Next, we have something called Cantos Presents African Roots, less polished than what the Putumayo puts out. And then another company that likes to try to put different music from different areas of the world together are the Rough Guides, which are generally travel guides, but they do produce CDs, and this is called Afrobeat Revival. I find that the Rough Guide music is kind of more academic and more, not quite as accessible as what Putumayo does. And then the last one, this is one of those, you think this might be African. It's called Africanism. Actually, it's a French guy and an African guy working together to produce an album using electronics as well as various instruments. And I think I tried to listen to this once or twice, and I don't think I really liked it all that much. Oh well. Onwards. We're back to Putumayo. As I say, they like to look at different cultures and mix their musics. And this is called an Afro-Portuguese Odyssey. And of course, Portugal both colonized areas in Africa, Angola and Mozambique, but also Brazil, where a lot of African people, well, we can't say they moved there. They were brought there against their will, but they lived and created a beautiful musical culture there. Now we have Agni. This is a Himalayan sitar music. It's called Himalayan Nights, Sitar and Tabla Backgrounds for Relaxation. I think I bought this at a Himalayan fair that they had in Berkeley, which, yeah, I have to, when I hear or see music that sounds intriguing, I'll pick it up, listen to it once or twice, and say, yeah, I kind of like this, but I haven't gone back and listened to it, and maybe I should. I like the idea of being relaxed. Now we come to the first band that this collection, which I really enjoyed a great deal and spent a lot of time listening to. And this is their premiere album. This is the Allman Brothers from Macon, Georgia. and this is their premiere album. By the way, I've noticed that the lettering is reversed on what you see, and I'm going to have to learn how to switch that. Then their second album, this is Idlewild South. This is the one I first listened to, or I should say the second I listened to, the first studio album I listened to, and it's a fine album. I really love this one. Then we have their classic, the Fillmore East. And this is a wonderful album. I have a note on my spreadsheet of music that there's a scratch on this, so I may need to replace it. But many years later, they put another album appeared. This is the complete recordings from the same concert that was, much more music than they could pack on the double album there. And then the very first Allman Brothers album I was introduced to when I was in college by some people, and this is Eat a Peach. Eat a Peach, of course, appeared after Duane had died, but it's a wonderful album. Actually, it's 2 discs, and one disc is wonderful. The other one, which contains the 2 sides of Mountain Jam, I don't know. Mountain Jam goes on too long, but I love the other 2 sides with One Way Out and Melissa and all those songs. It's just a wonderful album. And then the first album after which is Brothers and Sisters. And then I have 2 live Allman Brothers albums. This is at SUNY, State University of New York at Sunnybrook. And then A&R Studios in 1971. So two Allman Brothers live albums that were produced in years later. And then we have the Duane Allman Anthology. For Duane was a studio musician long before he fronted his own band, and he played for people like Wilson Pickett, Aretha Franklin, and Boz Scaggs, that wonderful Loan Me a Dime song. And then this is an album Greg Allman put out later in his life. I think this may have been his last album. Then he was marketed as the African answer to reggae. This is Alpha Blondie. I like this album. I like 2 or 3 of his songs really a lot. Unfortunately, he has a song on here called Jerusalem, where he sings about how Jews, Muslims, and Christians living together in peace and harmony. And I'm like, well, that would be nice. But but it's a good music. Okay, so I grew up I was born in 51, and most of the music that I was exposed to as a youth was the kind of stuff that my mom liked, that was kind of the adults, the swinging music of the 40s. Let's keep that tradition going as long as we can. And she was especially in love with Frank Sinatra. But that rock and roll stuff, that's garbage. We can't listen to that. So not until the Beatles was I really, exposed to the music of my own generation that much. And I loved all that music that happened ever from the Beatles onwards, but I didn't really know about the prehistory of rock and roll until in the early 70s, a filmmaker put together a film telling the night of 4 teenagers in Modesto, California. And the soundtrack for that, this is American Graffiti. And this is a wonderful double CD set of all these wonderful people like Fats Domino and Buddy Holly and Chuck Berry, and up through the Beach Boys. Del Shannon's wonderful Runaways on here. I'm like, oh my gosh. If there's a flaw to this, and there is a flaw, there's 2 actually. One is that the movie is filmed in the early 70s, but it recreates the night in the 50s or early 60s. And so they have the characters do go to a high school dance, and that high school dance band does a couple covers, and they're on here rather than the originals. And another is one song on each side. The beginning of the song is covered over with the voice of Wolfman Jack doing a wonderful rap, but nevertheless it interferes with listening to the full song. And I guess it's not really a drawback. It's that this is not a complete picture of the music of early rock and roll, because one of the most important artists of that era is not on here. Why? Because his manager didn't want his artist's music put there unless they were willing to pay far more than they had the budget for. And that, of course, is Colonel Parker and Elvis. Okay, next we have a music. I guess I have this under the title rather than by the artist. The artist is named Allah Jihad Rossi, and this is another of those. Let's recreate the unknown music of the ancient cultures. This is ancient Greek, ancient Egypt, and I don't remember if this is really good or not, but I think it's kind of haunting and interesting, but kind of not something you want to listen to every day. Okay, back to the early '60s. There were a lot of bands. After the Beatles came over, it was like everything British, and one of the most impressive British acts that came on was from Newcastle was the Animals, and this is the Animals. It's a greatest hits compilation, and of course, House of the Rising Sun, and We've Got to Get Out of This Place, and all these other wonderful songs. Now, eventually, the original Animals broke up, and Eric Burden, the lead singer, put together a second version of the Animals, known as Eric Burden and the Animals. They're the '66 on, and this is their greatest hits. I like to think of them as one act, but actually they're two, and there's a little, but there's a lot of continuity between the two, and I enjoy their music not so much as the original Animals. I really do like Sky Pilot. That's a scary cut for creating a battle. That can scare me. A woman who my brother really likes, and he gave me this and says you should listen to it, and I probably should, except she's been sitting in my boxes in my storage for a while. This is Fiona Apple. I understand this is not just called uh, fast as you can, but then it goes on, and the title is actually a full sentence. Yeah, I'll listen to this now that I have a place. And now we're back to Putumayo. And here we have Arabic beat and Arabic groove. Okay, onwards. Now, I mentioned as far as jazz goes, uh, you know, especially someone who has a career as long as this next artist, where do you start? Do you just randomly buy an album? No, everybody has a bad night. It's helpful to have some sort of a guide. And for me with jazz, one of the best guides was Ken Burns, who did a series on PBS. I've never seen the series, but I've bought a lot of the CDs, and this is probably the most famous, long-lasting artist in jazz. This is Louis Armstrong and there's fine cuts in here, and you can get the sense of the progression of the career from his early days in New Orleans to that wonderful song, "What a Wonderful World." Uh, Great album. And okay, so then I did buy a random album. This is Satchmo at the National Press Club. It probably is worth a listen, but when was this recorded? I can't really tell. I think it's later though. Yeah, it has Hello Dolly in here. He wouldn't record that early in his career. Okay, back to people I had known or had seen in clubs around. This is Monica Ashton, who performed in clubs in the South Bay when I lived there. This is kind of her and her band put together and just sold at shows, but she went down to LA and did a professional album. This is a fine album, and I really recommend I hope Monica's still around and playing, but this is her first album, and it's a fine album. It's still available there on the Amazon, so it's out. Okay, back to Putumayo. Here we have Asian Lounge. Okay, and I hope it's play these and get familiar with them. Okay, now I have taste in every genre around, and I was introduced by a roommate to this crazy musician from Texas in the '30s called uh, um, yeah, Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys. How could I forget them? And the modern tradition of Texas swing was taken up by a band called Asleep at the Wheels, and this is two albums in one. And I can't say I know all of these, but I like what I hear. Oh, it has Hot Rod Lincoln. That's cool. Um, So yeah, I'll re-listen to this. Now, sometime in the 2000s, I decided, maybe I should learn Spanish. And I ran into this guy in Mountain View. His name was Carlos, and he taught Spanish by introducing us to music, individual songs. And we would have the lyrics in English and in Spanish, and for that way we could learn some of the basics. And one of the bands that he introduced us is called Adder Siokpianos. Pianados. This is their album, which is called Caribe Atomico. The song that he introduced us to is called Manana, which is a kind of a funny song about how all these wonderful things I intend to do starting tomorrow, starting mañana. It's on here. It's not on the first of their albums I bought, which is their greatest hits, Lo Esencial, but that's why I went ahead and I should show this one second. But yeah, they're fun. And now here we have the Atrium Musicae di Madrid performing Musique di la Grece Antiche, in other words, ancient Greek music. Again, an experiment. I don't know. Sometimes it sounds, well, let's just say I'm glad I wasn't born in ancient Greece, because that's not the music I would have loved. Besides, I probably would have been a slave or something, peasant out in the fields. And then in the late 60s, the AFM radio station played this song of Bob Dylan's, recorded by an English band. The song is Wheels of Fire. And this is Brian Auger and Julie Driscoll and the Trinity. And they are doing that on this particular album. Now, it's still a very good song now that I'm listening to it years later. And now we have a group called the Relax. What is her name? There's Zara, or the group name isn't on here, but these are essentially natural sounds with a little bit of music in the background. So we have Relax with Mountain Streams, Relax with Ocean Relaxing Surf, and Relax with Secret Jungle. I thought I had more of these. These are all nice albums that you can kind of listen to and once or twice relax and then go back to whatever you're doing. So that's my A's, and I'll be back sometime to do my B's. And if anyone has any suggestions about other albums in the A's, especially the Cannonball Adderley and Louis Armstrong, that I should check out, I'll be glad to do that. Thank you, and hope you enjoyed this video.